Hello. So in this episode of Writing Notes, which features Frank as a guest star, who's now going to be exiting stage right, we're going to talk about dialectic argumentation. So dialectics is a particular way of organizing ideas or organizing arguments to establish the movement of ideas toward more refined or consensus ideas. So dialectics goes back to the German philosopher G.W.F. Hegel, who came up with this idea that essentially all ideas develop through the dialectic process, which is where you have a thesis or a particular idea or proposition which encounters an antithesis, a competing or alternative proposition. Out of that encounter between the two of them develops a synthesis. So synthesis becomes a new idea that draws, in theory, on the best portions of the thesis and the best portions of the antithesis, or that in some way reconciles the conflict between the two of them. And then this is where it gets really cool for Hegel, is that synthesis then becomes a new thesis, which encounters a new antithesis, producing a new synthesis, which becomes a new thesis for new antithesis, new synthesis, and so on until everything in the world is known, or the world ends, whichever comes first. So for Hegel, this is primarily a way in which ideas and knowledge evolves over time as particular positions are challenged and then refined through that challenge. But for rhetoric, for argument, we can actually use this structure as a jumping off point for organizing our own arguments. So essentially what we would do in a dialectic argument is to present one position, one proposition, one argument understanding of the world with a competing position. And then from that encounter, we develop our own position. So dialectic argument can conceptually go through multiple steps, but the basic movement is position X meets position Y, which synthesizes into position Z. Yeah, X, Y, and Z. So to try and give you a little bit more of a sense of this, let's take the issue of I just had an example I was thinking of a few minutes ago. Let's take the question of grading for universities. So there's an argument, the basic sort of existing argument, the thesis, is that university courses should be graded on a letter scale, A, B, C, D, and F, across the board. There's another argument which actually suggests that university courses should be graded pass-fail. So rather than setting students, so the argument for this position, this idea of pass-fail, is that A, B, C, D, F grading sets students in competition with one another, where the goal is to earn a particular letter grade by being better than your classmates, rather than to learn and internalize knowledge. Whereas the antithesis here suggests, under a pass-fail system, because all that you need to do is demonstrate that you have achieved a certain degree of mastery over the material, it's much easier for students to internalize and to genuinely come to grips with that information, because they're not as concerned about grades. The stakes for grade grubbing or the stakes for anxiety about grading and scoring and things like this become much lower in a pass-fail system. So we have these two positions: the thesis, traditional letter grading; the antithesis, pass-fail. Now there's a number of ways we could synthesize these. Because these are two, in effect, mutually exclusive propositions. If all of your grading is letter grades, then your grading is not pass-fail. And if all of your grading is pass-fail, then it's not letter grades. So we can find a compromise, or we can find an alternative or a middle ground or something like this. So one dialectic argument we might make, taking some of the principles from both sides, the benefits from both sides, our synthesis could be something along the lines of: general education requirements should be graded pass-fail so that they help students' GPAs without penalizing them for areas that they're not experts in, but classes within their major, where they're expected to develop a degree of expertise, should be graded through letter grades because this establishes a greater degree of or a greater gradation of mastery in that subject. Because, I mean, a C is not the same as an A in most courses. So ultimately here what we have is a dialectic argument for grading some courses pass-fail and some courses by letter grades. We take the benefits of letter grades, which is that it gives us a better sense of how successful a student was in a class, and we take the benefits of pass-fail, which is that it's much less anxiety-inducing and the stakes are lower for developing complete mastery, and we apply those to different situations. Again, Gen Eds, because students are not expected to develop mastery of them, but just familiarity, pass-fail. So the anxiety is lowered and students are better able to engage with the material in itself. Whereas for courses in their major, where they are expected to develop a degree of mastery, we can grade on a letter grade scale because that's a better way of assessing how successful you were at mastering that information. So we've got the thesis, we've got the antithesis, they encounter one another, and out of that encounter we have a synthesis, a new idea. And then from there, again, as Hegel says, that new idea, that synthesis, could encounter another thesis, or another antithesis, another contrasting way of looking at the world, to develop a new synthesis, and so on and so on and so on. But this is the way that you would incorporate this as a structure for argument. Position A meets position B, and out of that we synthesize position C, a new idea based on those two positions.